Hello, dear friends. Happy Saturday to you. It's good to be here. Before I get started, I'll just make a few housekeeping announcements. So, first of all, I'd like to check to make sure that the sound is working properly. So if you can hear me, let me know in the live chat. Let me know if you can hear me, all right? The format for today is good. I'm glad you can hear me. Awesome. Okay. So the format for today is that I will be offering some channeled messages for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then I'll take questions. So we'll be together about roughly 40 minutes to an hour, maybe a little bit longer than an hour, depending on how spirit guides. I'm flexible. So if I get a lot of questions, I'll make sure to get to them all. So that's the format. If you would like to leave a donation today, there's a link in the description box below. And if you do decide to leave a donation while I'm presenting, if you could let me know in the live chat, and then I can thank you personally by name in real time, that would be awesome. Cool. So just wait another minute to give people a minute to log on. If you're feeling excited about this topic of telepathy, give me a like. How are you all feeling today? All right, we'll get started. Let's begin by drawing attention to our breath. So at your own speed, taking 3 lovely, luxurious inhalations and exhalations. Using the breath to come into this present moment together. Feeling the energy of this moment, this gathering, this moment of love and connection, togetherness. And I welcome you. So, telepathy. What is telepathy? Let's begin there. So, telepathy, another way to state that I prefer the term soul communication. So telepathy has some baggage attached to it. In fact, we might even block ourselves if we think about it too much, or if we have this idea or this expectation of what telepathy is. We might think it's something out of the ordinary or supernatural, and then hence actually block ourselves from experiencing it and practicing it and knowing it. So what I recommend to people actually is maybe that word is not most resonant for you. And so the alternative term that I suggest is soul communication. Soul communication. I like that term because it actually says what it is really clearly. And if you are already on board with the idea of a soul, and if you're already on board with the idea of potentials of deep communication, then the term soul communication is a wonderful phrase term to use. So I'll be alternating between those two terms throughout this broadcast today. So just in your mind, though, see how it feels just to flip it into, oh, today we're going to be learning about soul communication. Does that feel better for you than, oh, today we're going to learn about telepathy? Just see and experiment for yourself. So the term soul communication is a way in to what I love as a practice of not just delivering messages, but of feeling our divine nature within. So I am a being who loves words and messages and language and sound. For those of you who know me well, you know that I'm obsessed with these things. And yet, soul communication goes beyond those things. It goes into the realm of emotions. It goes into the realm of omniscience. It goes into the realm of timelessness, so that the messages that we get are often timeless messages if we're really listening. They're not dependent on events or situations. They're truly for always. So I love playing with soul communication in the sense of this goes beyond whispering a word out into the universe and having someone else receive that exact precise word, although it can be that as well, but it's way more than that. It's multidimensional. As I was preparing for this event, I was posting some things on Facebook about soul communication, and I was saying that it is the way of the future for humanity. It's the way that human beings are going to naturally connect with each other in the future. I'm very much tuned into future timelines. You could say that the reason that I came here was to help humans become aware of the potentials of the future and to help guide them towards those potentials. So for me, I'm living in this reality with you, but really a lot of the time I'm in the future. And I can feel and see and sense that in the future, this soul communication is going to be standard and it's going to be normalized. So one of the things that I'm hoping, just gathering with you all beautiful people today and talking with you about this topic and feeling the energy amongst ourselves here. Oh yeah, good. Tanny Pat says, soul communication feels like less pressure. Cool. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't it? It's like, huh. So one of the things that I hope that we can do today, just by talking about this, having this conversation about soul communication, about telepathy, is that we can begin to normalize these kinds of conversations and take it off the shelf of the totally wacky and weird and miraculous, and put it on the shelf of, oh yeah, okay, normal, right? So that's my intention anyway. So how do we do the soul communication? You were drawn here to this broadcast for different reasons. And I've tuned in to trying to see who's going to be here today telepathically. And about 30 minutes before the broadcast, I got a very strong feeling about one person in particular who's here. And I just want to send my love out to you. And yeah. So how do we do this soul communication? How does it work? It's less of a linear thing and it's more of a felt thing. It's a thing to play with. So as I shifted the conversation from telepathy to soul communication, that wordage, so too I want us to move from a standard like step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of approach into a more fluid and more individualized, unique, soul-guided approach. So some of the things I might describe might resonate for you and some may not. The idea is use this broadcast to give you permission to do it. You can imagine I'm a teacher and I'm handing you a permission slip to go walk down the hallway to get whatever you need from the art supply closet. Remember, like when you were kids and you had to get permission slips from the teacher? We did. So I'm here. I'm handing you a permission slip, and you can use this to do it in your way. All right. So here is ways that I do it. So I'm a Reiki practitioner. So one of the ways that I do it, and I know someone on the call today is in the process of learning level 2 Reiki. And that level is where we learn to go beyond time and distance, or time and space. And so one of the things that I would recommend is, if you're really interested in this topic of telepathy, of soul communication, go out at some point in your life and take a formal course on energy work. So it could be any form of energy work. There's a billion million out there at this point. Reiki is probably the most famous and popular one at this time. There's so many, and they're all beautiful. So that would be the first thing. But you don't necessarily have to do that right now. So one of the easiest ways that you can engage in soul communication is practicing speaking to the higher self of someone that you love dearly. So the deeper the pre-existing connection, the more love that exists in that connection, the easier it will be to do this. So start practicing with people that you have the most deepest loving bonds with, the most healthiest, the most supportive, the most beautiful bonds. And start there, because what's going to happen is your cords of connection, and cords aren't always a negative thing. I know in the spiritual communities, we often talk about cutting cords and things like that, but cords can flow light and cords can flow trauma. And so we celebrate and we nourish those cords that flow love. And even in those relationships that are challenging, that we do need to clear away the negative parts of those cords, we can leave intact the light-filled, the positive, the nourishing parts of those cords. But that's a side note. So we practice with those that we have this deep loving connection with, that's pre-existing to our practice. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is to start to feel into the concept of a higher self. So each of us have a higher self. What is a higher self? When the universe is created, there is offshoots. So there's this core energy, you could call it God or source. And then there's little offshoots. You could think of it as like rays of the sun coming out, streaming out, these separate soul streams. And these streams, you could think of them as higher, each one is a separate higher self. And your higher self is very likely connected to, it could even be the same higher self as this person that you want to communicate with. So I'll give a personal example. A few weeks ago, I did a telepathic communication ceremony with someone that I deeply, deeply love. And it was interesting because in that ceremony, I discovered, as I was doing the communication with his higher self, that actually his higher self is the same as my higher self, which I didn't realize until then. So it was shocking and beautiful and explained a lot of why our connection is so deep. So it may, though, be that the person that you want to communicate with has a different higher self. So you could think of it as like a different ray of light coming from the sun. But the point is that when you set the intention to communicate with that ray of light, that higher self, if you will, you are sending your message, your feelings, your wishes, your hopes, your dreams, your love to that higher self. And then that higher self trickles down, spreads that information down into the conscious mind of that separate individual ego self, whoever you're talking to. So this communication may not be on the timeline that you would ideally want it to be on. So it could be that you communicate with this person on a Monday and their separate individual ego consciousness does not receive the message until 2 months from then, or even 2 years from then. Or it could be in that very moment as well. You don't have control over when the message arrives, and you also don't have control over the way that the message arrives, in the sense of parts of the message could come at certain times, and then parts of the message could be delayed for later times when that person's individualized consciousness, when their personality is ready to absorb the full amount of what you're sending. So you could think of it as, here's an example with animals. So let's say that you are wanting to communicate to a little ant that's crawling on the floor, that you love it and that you think it's really beautiful because you have a really beautiful connection with the ant world. So you're looking at an ant very intently walking across the floor, and you're really loving that ant. And so you're telling that ant that you love it. And then maybe you even tell that ant something about the meaning of life for you, and you send it some sort of blessing or some kind of explanation about how the world works and how you see the world. You could say to the ant that everything has a divine plan, for example. Or you could say, "Oh, little ant, may you be blessed in all your workings and all your relationships." And you could give this little prayer or this blessing for the ant. Is the ant brain going to perfectly receive all of the nuances of what you're saying? Well, no, because an ant brain is very different than a human brain. However, that ant brain is going to receive the level of wisdom at the level of the ant brain. So whatever that ant brain feels and receives or translates as love, as compassion, as blessing, it will feel it and get it. And it may even know that it's you that's sending it. It may somehow intuitively know, oh, it's that big creature up there that's somehow doing something really nice for me. So in the same way, if we're talking about telepathic communication, for example, with, let's say, angels or spirit guides, they're sending messages down to us telepathically, but our little human brains may not be evolved enough to fully grasp all the details. So we receive messages and words in our own way because we are not as complex and wise as those beings. So it goes both ways. Do you see? So anyway, going back to the example of your own practice. So when you send a message to someone, it depends on their level of evolution, how much they will receive from that message. But trust, and this is the key word that I will just repeat till the end of time. Trust, 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 trust. Trust that whatever part of the message, whatever aspect of the message that they will get is exactly what they need for their journey at that time. One of the things that telepathy teaches us is to trust. Our society, has ingrained in us not to trust ourselves in so many ways. That's what we've been taught. And so telepathy is a beautiful practice for learning that self-trust, for breaking out of the bindings and the barriers of what society has instilled in us, which is an overglorification of the logical, rational mind, and helps us move out into a wider broader and deeper understanding of the cosmos. So you send that information to the higher self of the person you're communicating with. I hope you're following me. I know I'm kind of speaking in like swooping circles. Let me know in the chat box if I'm making sense so far, and if you have any questions that are coming up so far. I want to make sure I haven't lost anyone yet. So just visualize and feel and think about the higher self of that being that you want to communicate with. And it can appear in your senses any way that works for you. It'll just appear. Maybe you'll smell their higher self. Maybe you'll feel the texture of the rays of light coming from that higher self. Maybe you'll feel the heat or the warmth or the sound of that person's voice, but on a different level. So allow that communication to happen between yourself and their higher self. If you wanted, you could allow your higher self to tell their higher self as well. Or it could be just your normal, like everyday self talking to their higher self. Let me move back just a little bit and say, before you do this communication, if you're feeling nervous about it for whatever reason, you can take some time to create a sacred space around you. So you can use crystals, you can use salt to create a sacred circle around yourself. You can call in Archangel Michael. You can call in your ancestors to protect you. So you create that safe and sacred space that'll give you that feeling of calm within your being. So you may or may not need to do that. So once you send that message out, here's the fun part. Sit and wait. So sit and wait. Be still, be silent. And this is where meditation comes in handy, having a practice of meditation. If your mind is very busy and very all over the place, this isn't going to work. So get yourself to a place where you've been practicing a meditation for a good period of time, where you can relatively go into a calm mental state. And so just sit. Allow yourself to sit as long as you need to sit. So it could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour. Don't have a time barrier on it. Give yourself plenty of space and then wait to hear a response. So you'll hear words in your mind. The voice may sound like the person you're communicating with, or it might not. And how you will know that it is a message from them is you will feel a sense of relief in your body, because some question you had has been answered. Some confusion you had has been answered. Some pain that you were suffering has been healed through their message. So the universe only ever wants to send us healing messages. Now, can the message be somewhat challenging? It could be. It could be to your ego a bit challenging. However, that message is going to be on some level relieving to your whole system. It's going to help you relax. So once you get that message, then allow yourself to feel any emotions that want to come forward at that moment. Feel. You may cry, you may laugh, you may jump up and down with joy. But again, give yourself enough space to let that message come back to you. And remember that time does not exist in the grand sense of the universe. It seems to on the human plane. We do utilize it. It is real to a certain extent. But in the grander sense, it does not exist. So how did that message come back to you? Let's say that human individualized personality consciousness doesn't receive your message for a week, but then in your time frame, you got it back in 10 minutes. How does that work? Again, soul communication pushes us beyond the boundaries of the linear thought processes that are so glorified in our world today. It makes us trust. It makes us trust. And it helps us stand outside those restrictions and those boundaries. Helps us open. Okay, so before I get to the questions, I have one more point that I want to make. So one of the ways that we can actually accidentally block ourselves from doing soul communication, from doing telepathy, is we try too damn hard. Like we're efforting, we're like forcing it. We're like, "Ugh." And that is definitely not gonna work. That will block our actual efforts to telepathically communicate. So what I actually invite you to do is over the next couple weeks until our next soul satsang, which will be in a few, I think 3 weeks from now, or two weeks from now, maybe. I'll give you the specific dates in a little bit. But between now and then, what I invite you to do, you can call this a little bit of Anya's homework, okay, is to notice in your life all the ways that you're already telepathically communicating. And you might totally surprise yourself to realize how much you're already doing it. So here's an example. The other day, I had a dear friend over for tea, and we hadn't seen each other in a couple months or something, and we just longed to be together. It felt so nice. So she comes in my house, and we hug, and then she needs to use the restroom. So she's like, "Excuse me, I got to go to the restroom." And we sort of have a routine. So whenever she comes over, she comes in, and then I always say, like, "Would you like some tea?" And then she says yes. And then she follows me into the kitchen, and then I show her my giant abundant tea selection, and then she chooses what tea she wants. But for whatever reason on that day, she comes in the bathroom, she goes to the bathroom, and then I go in and I just start making the tea. And I hesitated for a second. I was like, oh, I should wait for her to come out of the bathroom so I can ask her what tea she wants. But then I just thought, I felt deep inside, no, I'm just going to choose the tea that she wants. And so I chose the tea, and then she comes out of the bathroom, and I said, I hope you don't mind, but I selected a tea for you. And she started laughing. She was cracking up, and she said, oh my gosh, I was in the bathroom, and I thought, oh, I hope that Anya just picks a tea for me because I know she'll know what I want. And we just laughed because this is one of the many examples of telepathic communication that you have every day with people. And you almost write it off or you don't notice it because it's just so mundane or so seemingly just silly or funny. But if you think about that, what we were able to do together about the tea, if that's possible, then by relaxing and just letting ourselves notice how we're already telepathically communicating all the time, then then we can actually engage in this practice consciously and up the ante, really. Up the ante and surprise ourselves and learn things from the universe that we didn't know before. So it's turning it just first, so recognizing like how often you're doing it. You know, you're thinking about someone and they call you. That's a very common example. Or you're talking with someone and then you hear how they're going to finish their sentence and then you finish it for them, right? How did you do that? Well, that was telepathy. So first noticing what you're already doing and then slowly at your own pace transitioning it into a spiritual practice that you can utilize and engage to communicate with people for different reasons. Cool. That feels complete, that part of the broadcast. So I'm going to move to the questions bit. If you are resonating with what I have shared so far, please please share a like with me. I would really appreciate it. Okay, so I have 3 pre-submitted questions that I'd like to share. And then as I'm sharing these pre-submitted questions, could you please type your question in the live chat box, please? And I'll get to yours. Okie doke. You guys ready? You ready? Ready? Okay. Ready. Okay, so Tanisha asked, she said, how do I know that telepathy is happening? Okay, so there's a few ways. One way is to be very aware of buzzing in your ear. So if suddenly you are just going about your daily life and all of a sudden you get that shift where it feels like one ear is it's usually just one ear, it just starts ringing or buzzing, that's a very good indication that you have something, someone, something, some entity in communication with you now in that moment. So pay attention to the thoughts that you're suddenly thinking after the buzzing starts or right before the buzzing starts, because those are crucial to understanding some question about the universe that you've been trying to figure out. Another way is what I mentioned before, but it bears repeating, which is when you get a message from someone, when you've received a message from someone, a way that you know that it's really telepathy is that you feel within yourself a sense of calm and peacefulness, a sense of relaxation. Like, so your physical body literally has like like an unraveling moment. Maybe your shoulders were tight and then you just, you unraveled a bit. So that's another way. Another way is when you have a sudden burst of emotion. So the things that, so let's say, for example, that you are telepathically communicating with your spirit guides. So let me take a detour for a second. So you can do telepathic communication with many beings. You can do it with people that are still alive, embodied somewhere on the planet. You can do it with beings, humans, who are no longer living in their body. They've crossed over into other dimensions after their physical body has died. You can do that you can telepathically communicate with those kinds of people. You can telepathically communicate with animals, plants, and then you can do this with higher beings, spirit guides. So when you are receiving, for example, a message from a spirit guide, what tends to happen is that you have a release of emotion that you didn't even know that you had. Oftentimes, our guides, our angels, will give us messages of they're really simple messages, such as "I love you," or "You're always protected and guided," or "I'm with you," or "You're beautiful." And when we get those messages, we will have this emotional cathartic release. We might suddenly burst into tears because we didn't even realize that we needed to hear that. But oh gosh, it feels so good to hear that. So, and then if you hear a telepathic message from any other kind of being, and it's almost like it's like a big burst of emotion, some rush of emotion. That's a good indication that telepathy is taking place. And that goes too for the outward communication. If you're sending a message out and it's accompanied by a great deal of emotion, that's also a sign that this is being sent out. Emotions are the waves that we ride like surfers. So as human beings, we can utilize emotion, and then we can also just be aware of emotion when it's happening, because it's a signpost that something energetic is happening. Something is happening interdimensionally. I hope that helps, Tanisha. That was a really good question. Thank you. Okay, so Derek says, how do you send good energy to someone while you telepathically communicate with them? So Derek, I would say a simple way to do it is send words to that being that are specifically chosen with such care. So going into the telepathic exchange with a certain sense of gravity. So creating the sacred space around you, lighting a candle, playing really beautiful music, sinking into a meditative state, not having things to do right on the heels of what you're doing now, but really taking this as a full-blown ceremonial practice. And then when those words are offered, to select each one with care. It's almost like a poem. So it's like every single word matters. And you can start to feel in each word the tone and the vibration of each word, and allow those loving words, that good energy, to be as potent as possible through that care that you take the time to craft that message. And if your telepathic message or communication involves a question, like if you need to ask that being something, and maybe it's a difficult question, maybe you've been suffering with something and you feel like you want to know the answer to something and it's been hard, and you can still craft the message with love, in the sense of, you can just say, like, for example, you could say, like, if you were talking with someone who has passed on to the other side, you could say, I've really been struggling. I miss you. It hurts for me to not be there with you in the body. And you can be totally honest with that being, and talk about your suffering and talk about your difficulties, and then also add on to it a blessing or a thank you or words of gratitude. So it's making sure that that message has contained in it words of affirmation, love, gratitude, thanks, sacredness. So within the words themselves are carried this vibration of healing energy to that being, wherever they may exist in time and space. Ultimately, every being through time and space exists right here, inside of you. And it is through the great mystery of death that we learn that lesson. It is through the great mystery of loss, when we are separated from those we love. I'm very connected to the being Rama, and this was one of the incarnations of Vishnu in yoga, and the tales and lore of yoga. And Ram, he had a really tough life. He was a real human about 5,000 years ago. And he went through many, many very, very hard things. One of the things was he was the love of his life, Sita. She was many periods in their connection separated from him, physically separated. So at one point, she was captured and taken thousands of miles away, and he was looking for her. He had to get a whole army together to get her back. He was a king. And at another point in their journey, he was told by God to go up on a mountain and leave her all by herself while she was pregnant with his children, with twins. So he literally was asked to do the unthinkable, do the impossible, which is leave his beloved behind and go on this mountain for he didn't know how long. When you think about that, when I think about that and think about some of the things that I've been asked to do by the universe in recent times, things that I never thought that I could do involving being separated from someone, you start to get a sense of the lessons involved in that loss, because you start to feel how every being is a part of yourself and every being lives within your heart. And that actually brings me to my third question that I was given in advance. It leads perfectly into it. So Nadi says, does telepathy change the concept of missing someone? I love this question. So yes, it does. So does telepathy change the concept of missing someone? So there's different kinds of missing. The missing that most people talk about when they say, I miss you, they're talking about it on many different levels simultaneously. So they're usually referring to, I miss your physical body being in your mind, and I miss your emotional self interacting with my emotional self. And they're saying, I miss your consciousness mingling with my consciousness through conversation, through words exchanged, through sounds exchanged, through touch, etc. And when you start to move into these layers, these learnings, these lessons about telepathy and connection, because we're always in connection, we start to see that missing, yes, there is a missing that happens on the physical level, the body craves to be near the body of another body. And that can't be just pretended away. That's real. In a certain level, that's real. But what we start to discover is that the missing of the other ways, the consciousness is mingling, the emotions surging together, the information being exchanged, that all can be achieved through soul communication. And it's challenging for us humans to comprehend this at this time because this is not what we've been taught. Higher civilizations are taught this. The children are taught from a young age how to do these things. Telepathy is not a big deal for other civilizations. But for us, it seems like this grand thing. But we're learning. So we're gathering here today and we're learning about these things. But like you asked, Nadi, missing someone becomes more and more not a part of the experience of being a human, because we start to see that we are always in connection. We are always communicating, especially if we have a bond with someone that transcends lifetimes, that we have reincarnated over and over and over and over with that being to do specific work, to have specific experiences. And that bond is unbreakable. Now, I suppose in some certain circumstances, maybe the beings involved in that bond could one day try with all their might to explode it and make it just go into the void. I'm sure that's possible. But why would you want to do that? Even if there is inherent trauma and pain in some of the aspects of the connection through certain lifetimes, even if some of that lingers, that you could call it negative karma lingering, that stuff can be worked out. So what I would say is those connections that we have where we feel like we miss someone when they're not physically present with us, what I would say is those connections, if we are either put in the position against our will to be not near them, or like Rama, if we are guided by the universe to be in the position of purposely walking away from those beings with the physical body, walking away, then it is time for us in either one of those scenarios to get down to the business of cultivating telepathy. That, and knowing that death does not end the connection. So in the story of Rama and Sita, Sita died and Ram was not with her. He did not get to be with her when she passed. And I can feel, it's like making me tear up. It's making me, I feel their eternal love. I feel their connection continuing. So yes, telepathy definitely changes the concept of missing someone. It makes us look at things from a much deeper lens. Does anyone else have a question that they would like me to address today, or just a comment that they would like to share? This is such an important topic, and I feel really blessed to have met with you today. I want to share, I'll just give you another minute if you want to type something, but if not, I want to share with you the dates for our next Soul Satsang. So if you have your little calendar handy, Saturday, April 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern, and Saturday, April 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern time, Eastern in the US. We will be meeting twice in April. So the plan was to basically do this once a month, and I'm really enjoying it so very much that that I was thinking, let's just try it out in April twice, and I'll see what the feedback is, and maybe we'll keep doing that going forward. I'm not sure. Definitely once a month, I'm committing to that. But we'll see. Maybe we'll just sporadically do it twice and see how it goes. So, all right. Let me check in and see if Spirit wants me to share anything else on this topic. Yeah. So I'm just hearing go forth and do this. Go forth and do this. You can do this tonight. Create that ceremonial ritual space. Really devote some time to this. Know that you can do it. Trust yourself. And again, it's not going to follow the preconceived ideas of linearity or normal human logic, left brain logic. It's going to be different. Allow it to be whatever it is. Allow it to unfold. All right, you guys rock. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really pleased that we were together today. Wishing you all delicious and healing and loving and connecting soul communications. I love you all. Bye for now.